Hey vinyl community, in this video I'm going to be talking about the condition of the records that we find when we're record shopping, what's acceptable, what is not acceptable. And this is just my own personal opinion, but when I am out record shopping, I find records like you do in various states of disrepair, or they've got certain blemishes or imperfections that you run into. And so I am going to be ranking the imperfections from what I consider to be acceptable all the way to what is totally unacceptable and I will not buy under any circumstances, even if it's a grail. So the first and least bothersome kind of blemish for a record that I find out in the wild is going to be ringwear. I don't mind ringwear all that much. If it's severe ringwear, then probably I will pass it up, but if we're talking light to moderate, doesn't really bother me that much, especially if it's an older record. It's just something that happens over time. It's hard to avoid, no matter how careful you store your records. But ringwear is not that big of a deal to me. I don't consider that to be, anything that's unacceptable. Number two, shelfwear. Now that can be the corners are frayed, or just the corners are not sharp. Could be where the record, the edge of the record jacket might be a little bent out a little bit. But just normal signs of shelf wear don't bother me that much. It bothered me a little more than ringwear because I certainly like my jackets to be in as close to perfect condition as possible. But that's an unrealistic expectation. A large majority of record owners do not treat their albums with the same amount of care as us audiophiles do. And so, regular shelf wear where the corners are just a little worn down don't bother me. It doesn't bother me all that much. Number three, writing on the cover. Now, I'm not talking like huge initials scribbled in magic marker. I'm talking somebody signs their initials in pen or their last name in pen. We've all seen those albums out there. For me, if it's an album that I've really been looking for, if it's a grail, I'm not going to pass it up just because there's initials or writing on it in pen. I've even gone so far as to buy an album that does have initials on it in magic marker, as long as they're not too big. I have passed on albums that I really, really wanted because they did have large initials written on them in a Sharpie, but still not as egregious as some of the other album imperfections that I'll get into. Number four, bent covers, like bent corners. Any part of the cover that is bent. Now it's starting to get on my nerves a little bit. Now I am thinking, okay, I might need to pass this up because I really don't like my jackets beat up. Certainly it's important the condition of the vinyl, but also I really want the record to look nice when you pull it out of however you're storing it. I want it to look nice in the protective sleeve, and bent corners are pretty easy to spot. And if something is bent too much, even if it's an album that I really want, that's when I start thinking, well, maybe I'm going to pass on this. Maybe it's just not worth it, particularly if the album is priced like it doesn't have an imperfection on it. Next on my list, number five for me is going to be seam splits. And again, it depends on the severity of the seam split. If it's just from the outer edge of the jacket, quarter inch or something, that can be easily taped up, repaired. But if it's the entire length of the jacket, no, I'm not going to buy an album. Even if it's, well, I wouldn't say never. I mean, it would have to be a pretty significant grail, something that I'm really looking at, like in a total original pressing of a Beatles album or something. Even if it had a seam split, they can be taped up. I'd rather not have tape on my album jackets, but seam splits really do bother me, especially if it's along the spine. I do not care for the spine to be split because that's how I view my albums when they're stored in my storage space. So seam splits and spine splits really bother me, and I've passed up many records because they were in that condition. Number 6 is going to be shoe prints. If there's a shoe print on the album, again, it depends on how large the shoe print is. It muddy, a muddy shoe print? Is it just the worn outline of a shoe? Is it a running shoe or is it a loafer? All those kind of things enter into, am I going to pass up that album? But by and large, I prefer not to have a shoe print on my album. And there have been some important albums that I wanted to add to my collection that just had, some had 2 shoe prints, the left and the right. Others, it was just one, but that to me is unacceptable, and I would 9 times out of 10 pass that up. Number 7 is going to be water damage. Hate water damage. Now I'd be lying if I said have never bought an album with water damage. If it's one that I really want, and again, like every item on this list, it depends on the severity, but water damage really bothers me. In a lot of cases, it not only warps the jacket itself, but there's some discoloration to the record jacket. Water damage is just bad news, and normally you'll see a lot of those in the dollar bins anyway, but I have seen some that are with the other regularly priced records, and just not going to pick that one up. Number 8, anything that's got fire damage on it. Has the cover been burnt? Is there any sign? Does it smell like smoke? Or, is the front of the jacket burned off and there's, the smell of ashes or something on it? Is a quarter of the jacket burned off? And there's different reasons. Like the album could have been on a fire. Somebody could have deliberately set fire to the album. Even the smallest amount of fire damage or evidence that this album jacket or album has been set on fire, I am going to pass it up. I don't have many albums in my collection that do have fire damage on them or have been burnt up, but it's just it's a real deal breaker for me. Number 9, has any part of the album jacket been eaten by an animal or a child? Has, the bottom right corner been chewed off? Could be by a dog. I've seen my own children eating parts of my record jacket. Before I can intervene, next thing you know, the corner of the record jacket is totally eaten away. I'm not going to buy it. You may. That may not be something that bothers you or something that prevents you from buying the record, but I would prefer not to have any part of my record sleeve, teeth marks or just entirely chewed away. And last 10, this is my number 10, and absolutely, I don't care how severe this is, but if there's any fecal matter at all on the record jacket, I am absolutely walking away. I am not buying that record. Absolutely not. And like I say, it doesn't matter if it smells like it or if it has obvious signs of fecal matter. I'm not even going to give it a second thought. It could be a grail. It could be an original pressing. It could be something that, a Japanese pressing that I've never seen before. Just something extremely rare, but I'm going to pass on it every time at the first sign of fecal matter. So that is my list. Maybe you feel differently. Maybe you're accepting things that I would not, but nonetheless, we all see different blemishes and things out in the wild, but that is my ranking in terms of least acceptable or most acceptable to no thanks, I'm going to pass on it. Hope this has been informative or at the very least entertaining. And as always, thanks for watching.